Okay, so this was our project on the Maya disappearance. This was done by Sarah Cramer, Jane Edison, and Aryan. So the myth that we focused on was that people commonly believed that the Maya population just disappeared, like up and left, instead of like dissipated or moved locations. And they believed that they went from being a flourishing, complex civilization to suddenly no longer existing, like evaporating into thin air. That they were just gone, that they were abandoned, and that there are no current Maya people today. Some media on the Maya disappearance and the Maya collapse included here are like videos from a history channel on YouTube and some articles from like news outlets. So it's a pretty heavily reported upon topic, and most of these videos actually and like news articles talk about how they were like a disappearing civilization. Like even you can see in the titles, Ancient Aliens, the Great Maya Disappearance, and why did the Maya civilization collapse? So it's really talked about as like a solid collapse, like all in one fell swoop. So we're here to debunk that. So what actually happened to the Maya? Due to a complex combination of factors, the Maya population, quote unquote, collapsed. And these many factors include, just to name a few, soil erosion, loss of fertility, climate change, drought, overpopulation, subsistence stress, earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanic activity, deforestation, and so on. You can see here on the right side. But the ones that we want to focus on here are overpopulation and the environment, like climate change and drought, as well as intersite warfare, political, ideological pathology, and fatalism causes, as well as the failure of kingship. So, some of the environmental causes are drought and deforestation, and drought is a huge one because during the time frame of the Maya population, there was a major drought, so that is a huge factor into their like dissolution. And actually, some evidence here, like physical, would be the marine sediment core from the northeastern Caribbean shows that the sea surface salinity was lowered during this time, which indicates a lack of summer rainfall. The Maya were extremely dependent on rainfall to survive, and the insufficiency of it factored into the collapse. For example, the Maya farmed maize, which is modern day corn, and it's a very water intensive crop, which means that it relies heavily upon the rainfall in order to produce like successful harvests each year and to get a large and successful yield. So it was hard to produce enough maize to feed the large population and sustain them for as much as they needed to eat. And for deforestation, the Maya cleared land to make space for their growing maize, which limited their resources and influenced the quality of their soil. So they were, taking a lot of trees out to plant new corn and maize, but that eventually just diminished their quality of their land. So the lack of trees led to less fertilized soil, soil erosion, and increased temperatures. So is a little bit of a environmental factor there. But as for social and political causes, the Maya experienced overpopulation because, as we saw in the previous slide, they had trouble keeping their subsistence like values up and sustaining them. So they eventually became overpopulated and couldn't sustain the population with what they were growing and everything that they had. So overpopulation caused resource distress, as well as the drought caused the resources to be hard to produce. So that led to malnutrition and eventually just a mass migration of Maya outside of the location that they were at. So malnutrition and overpopulation just led to them, eventually deciding that that location was just not good for them. So they moved. As well as the kingship collapsing, and there was also class conflict. We have archaeological evidence of class conflict from like sites being dug up and found that there's evidence of fortresses and like strongholds being built and keeping them around the area. So it leads us to evidence and conclusions to be drawn that there was some like intersocial and intersite conflict. And this is also a direct result of a kingship collapse because people started moving away from glorifying individual kings and started to focus more on like lineages as a defining factor into who is king. And we also can see that monumental centers were abandoned, so they had less like need to like revere their kings and see them as divine people, and dwindling in the belief of divinity in kings. So if they're experiencing such droughts, like what are the kings going to do to help that? So they have a lot less faith in them. Some of the archaeological evidence we have is that there was an increasing evidence of war, like I mentioned, the strongholds and the different like fortresses built that show evidence for intersite warfare. We have Maya stelae that were broken and buried, so there's a lot more evidence of them, like kind of ideological strife, and then some evidence of fortification. Um, where are the Maya today? The Maya currently live in areas such as southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, and Honduras. And there are roughly 8 million Maya alive today, despite people thinking that they just disappeared. And there are around 30 Mayan languages, most still spoken today. Some of the current Maya groups include the Yucatecs, the Mopan, and the Quiche, which is a minority. We derive that from the minority rights group International Source. And here are our sources. We have a bunch of different ones here. And thanks for listening.